nervous smattering of applause. It's okay. It's all right. All right. What was trumpet one, alto one, tenor one, bass one? One, two, three.
Well, welcome to all of you and welcome to the band. We've really been anticipating all of you coming, and I will let Bob introduce the band after worship during the announcements. One who comes from near and the others who come a little bit from afar, but he'll tell you about them. But we're so glad. Thanks again for coming because we've been looking forward for this for a long time, and so far so good. We're so glad to have everyone here. It's wonderful to have all of you in worship this morning. And we do want to put our hearts and minds and souls into worship along with jazz and all the music that we will hear. I think it was Martin Luther said that music touches our souls more than words do. And I think that that will come to be this morning. So I want to call Cashlyn up. She's going to give us our mission moment and tell us a little bit about our offering for the month.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
For the past 5 years, I have been involved with the group NAMI and specifically NAMI New Hampshire. I first got involved, I had a family member that was exhibiting some behaviors that nobody could understand. And after probably 6 months of painful wondering, oh, not me, how can I go on? And no one seeming to know any answers. I kept on seeing these tables that would talk about NAMI, and there were representatives there. And one day I finally picked it up and I said, well, there's got to be something here. And what an amazing experience it's been since I've been involved, where hope did not once exist. has blossomed forth really a new beginning for me. NAMI New Hampshire is also all welcoming. No matter what walk of life you're in, if you are actually the person who is experiencing some area of mental health that is challenging for you, it doesn't matter if you're a veteran, if you're contemplating suicide, if you just don't know how to deal with your anxiety, there is a broad spectrum of services and people that are available to all of us to help you understand what's going on with you and with your loved ones and with the community at large. NAMI is a grassroots organization that was begun by a gal who said, there's no services, there's nothing here. And from that there are initiatives all over the state. There are programs that help parents, relatives to advocate for people with mental illnesses, from learning how to write bills and pass laws into legislation. There are programs that are 6-12 weeks to have you learn how the different spectrums of mental illness and how it may look from the person on the inside. Also, there's training for our police officers, our emergency personnel, and I've had the privilege through my own desire, I have gone through all of these trainings in a hope to be comforted for myself. And in it, I've learned that I fall into spectrums of mental illness, that we all have aspects of this. And the stigma removal of that is to learn that we all have challenges and to be supportive of one another. And that when you don't think that there is anything to help you, there is. And this organization, I can't speak enough about it. Just even going to their website, there's a wealth of information and support that you would, if you just cruise around, you go, wow, I've learned something today. I can be helpful to myself and I can be helpful to others. So I encourage you, if you've never taken a look at NAMI NH, to just cruise around to the website, click on a couple of links, see if there's anything there that's for you or possibly for somebody else. I know that you will find something that enriches your life. And I will speak a little bit more about some of the programs next week if I'm given the opportunity. And I am free to anyone at any time. If you want to call or email or reach out, I'm happy to talk about it. And through this, I'm healed, I'm hopeful, and I am celebrating the wonderful life that we have and all the myriad forms it takes. Thank you.
Thank you.
The word of glorious, Joey 16, 16. One, two, three.
So the first scripture this morning is from the book of Isaiah, the 43rd chapter. Yeah, but they weren't hurting Hancock. Now thus says the Lord who created you, he who formed you, O Israel, not fear, I have redeemed you. I have called you by name, you are mine. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. And fill the waters, they shall not overwhelm you. Also, when you walk through fire, you shall not be burned, and the flame. You are my witnesses, and my servant, whom I have chosen, for you know and believe me and understand that I am He. For me no God was formed, nor after shall there be any after me. Do not remember the former things, or consider the things of old. I am about to do a new thing. Now it springs forth, do you not perceive it? I will make a way in the wilderness and the rivers in the desert. The wild animals will honor me, the jackals and the ostriches, for I give water in the wilderness and rivers in the desert, to give drink to my chosen, to people whom I formed for myself, so that they might declare my praise. And a reading from John's Gospel in the 16th chapter, verses 12 through 15. This is Jesus talking. I still have many things to say to you, but you cannot bear them now. When the Spirit of truth comes, he will guide you into all the truth. For he will not speak on his own, but will speak whatever he hears. And he will declare to you the things that are to come. He will glorify me, because he will take what is mine and declare it to you. All that the Father has is mine. For this reason, I said that he will take what is mine and declare it to you. This is the good news of the gospel. Thanks be to God.
And I remember that we were playing So What, one of Miles's compositions from the late 50s, I guess. And Tony Williams was playing drums, Ron Carter bass, Wayne Shorter saxophone, and it was a really hot night. The music was tight, it was powerful, it was innovative, and fun. We were having a lot of fun, and the music was on. Tony Williams was burning on his drums, and so right in the middle of Miles's solo, when he was playing one of his amazing solos, and I'm trying, I'm in there and I'm playing. Right in the middle of his solo, I played the wrong chord. A chord that it just sounded completely wrong. It sounded like a big mistake. And I did this and I went, oh, like this. And I put my hands around my ears. And Miles paused for a second. And then he played some notes that made my chord right. He made it correct, which astounded me. I couldn't believe what I heard. Miles was able to make something that was wrong into something that was right, with the power of the choice of notes that he made and the feeling that he had. And so I couldn't play for about a minute. I couldn't even touch the piano. But what I realize now is that Miles didn't hear it as a mistake. He heard it as something that happened, just an event. And so that was part of the reality of what was happening at that moment. And he dealt with it. He found something that, since he didn't hear it as a mistake, he felt it was his responsibility to find something that fit. And he was able to do that. That taught me a very big lesson about not only music, but about life. We can look for the world to be as we would like it to be as individuals, make it easy for me, that idea. We can look for that. But I think the important thing is that we grow. And the only way we can grow is to have a mind that's open enough to be able to accept situations, to be able to experience situations as they are and turn them into medicine, turn poison into medicine. Take whatever situation you have and make something constructive happen with it. That's what I learned from that situation with Miles.
Well, that's it.
Game over. I asked him if I could interview him because I always wanted to interview someone, and so Tim said okay. And so the first question I wanted to talk to him about the video and get his reflections on the video. I know Tim has watched this a number of times, so have I. Actually, Tim preached about this at my installation when I was in Franklin. But when I'm thinking about this, that idea about how anything that happens is just an event, and in Herbie Hancock's situation, Miles just incorporated it into the music. So I wanted to ask him about, relating that to life and where God is present in our lives when things are unexpected or the difficult happens, or we think it's a mistake, however you want to put it.
Well, I think Herbie said it well, but the piece that I really resonated with, especially again, listening to the video, was when the things that happen to us in life are self-inflicted. Herbie played that chord, and we all play those chords, don't we, in our lives? And it's not only that our life now feels like it's in some sort of jeopardy because of what this is that we've done or that's occurred, but there's this powerful, powerful dynamic of shame that happens to every human being. It's the earliest dynamic that you begin to see develop in young infants is a sense of shame. So we carry that possibility and that potential within us for our whole lives. And so when that terrible feeling overcomes you, what do you want to do? You just want to run somewhere and hide. And, you know, Herbie, he did this and then he didn't play for a minute. A minute is like an eternity during so what? I mean, you know, I've not played for 30 seconds and it felt like an eternity. So he just was trying to come to terms with that feeling of shame and humiliation. And so to remain open and to remain vulnerable and to then be able to be with, for Herbie to be able to be with what Miles was doing, who didn't see it as a mistake, but saw it as, in terms of one of the scriptures, a new thing. To Miles, it was just a new thing to be gotten with. So that takes a lot of courage and practice and, frankly, faith. I think as people of faith, one of the things that we're asked to do is to remain vulnerable. And I think there's a lot in our Christian theology and Christian tradition and way of being church that asks us to step again and again into our openness and vulnerability, particularly at those parts in what the Christian tradition we call sin, those parts of us that are inevitably falling short of the glory of God. So,
well, part of what you said kind of leads me into the next question I was thinking about, and that was about the text in Isaiah, and especially that text in Isaiah, because the whole chapter is about God's redemption of us. And then toward the end, it says, God says, I'm about to do a new thing. Now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it? And so my question to Tim is about what you've learned from jazz, especially around that new thing. And also, Tim and I are in a group called the New Thing Task Force, and we've been talking about church and what does it mean to be nimble in a church, and can improvisation help us? Improvisation from jazz and comedy and theater, can that help us at all? So I wondered what you've learned from those concepts around innovation and jazz in your life. And I don't know if you want to talk at all about what's happened at First Church and in that congregation, because it's had a jazz sanctuary for 7 years now.
7 years,
is that right?
over
so
7
I just,
years.
I just wonder about some of those concepts, new thing, redemption. If you could talk about them a bit.
Yeah, I found myself thinking about this in a kind of a strange way, which is the new thing, the new idea around a jazz worship experience with wonderful music and openness to new things and progressive theologies. I had that idea in that it just wouldn't let go of me. It was like a call maybe 25 years ago. And I thought all these different ways that it might happen, and like in some emerging church literature, they talk about a third space. Well, where's the third space that we could do this? And it just never seemed to come together. And then somebody in the search committee who called our pastor, Amelia Halstead, said, Well, we've arrived on the person we think should be our next settled pastor, and we want to tell you she's a jazz singer. And I said, "What?" He said, "Call her now." And you know, the rest is kind of history. But it made me think about timing, because sometimes new things emerge over time, and discerning when the time is right. Timing in jazz is huge. When I started playing again in my 50s and had a wonderful teacher, he taught me for a while, piano teacher, and he finally said, I'm not going to teach you anymore. You need to learn to play in time. And that means to like not stop when you've made a mistake. He said, and the only way you're going to do that is to get a bass player who's willing to play with you. So, oh, there he is. He came to my house for about a year every Saturday morning for an hour. And he just played the changes, and he didn't stop for anything. And I'd have to catch up or find myself or listen to the bass as you know, God's voice of where we are. You know, that's kind of what the bass tells us, is where am I right now? Okay, we're at B flat. Okay, that is what I learned from Jock. And then with Eddie, the world's most spiritual drummer, the time is always right there, as they say, in the pocket. So learning the timing for when to discern, to move into what God is creating, is one of the main things I think I've learned in jazz, to be patient and wait for the time.
Third space you're talking about, can you say anything more about that?
Well, the third space is sort of like, in that sense, is out in the community, out in the world. And so with Jazz Sanctuary, although it's almost always been in our church, we've been in other churches, and now we are more out in the world. And I think that's where, you know, our message is called for all of us to be out in the world. This church, I happen to know, is out in the world quite a lot, and good job. And I think that's where, you know, where the new thing is happening.
Yeah. We have 3 people out in the world actually in Ghana this month. So,
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they really are.
Oh, they really are out
They
in the
really
world. Wow.
One thing in thinking about jazz, and it comes out of blues,
Mhm.
and the blues is about suffering and pain. And I was thinking about the genre and kind of the church, or just faith. We have joy, we have grief, there's joy and faith.
Yeah.
I mean, joy and grief, both in blues and jazz, is in those musical genres. And then I was just thinking about, because jazz has really come out of I would say probably the African-American experience in the United States. Am I correct?
Absolutely.
That? And so I was reading about James Cone, who is probably one of the best known Black theologians. And he wrote, "The blues and the spirituals flow from the same bedrock of experience, and neither is an adequate interpretation of Black life without the other." And of course, next Sunday is Juneteenth, which is a new federal holiday. And I think about, there's other holidays that are like this. When I think about that holiday, I think about the enormous grief of what it comes out of, and also, and what the impact of slavery, and also the joy that it is a celebration of, I want to get this right, the Emancipation Proclamation reached the people who were enslaved in Galveston, Texas in 1965, and that was the last place in the United States to receive notice that enslaved people were no longer enslaved. So I know that, Tim, you've spent a lot of time in New Orleans.
Yeah.
And you know, he knows a bit about the jazz culture there. So I wondered about the meaning of jazz with those, you know, in New Orleans and the jazz culture there.
Yeah, the whole culture of New Orleans is remarkable, and you're absolutely right that it would have to be the place where jazz and blues both come from, because it is such a place of agony and suffering and just unmitigated joy. And it's all there, sort of like all the time. I've come to respect that. And it's in all the music there. They have jazz, blues, gospel, zydeco, soul, funk. I mean, so much of really American music has sprung from that place. And they, you know, the second line tradition, I mean, they know how to party, but they also are true to the roots of their experience, including the pain of it. Some of us have gotten to know Delphio Marsalis through the years, who comes up here every fall to play. And he just is so frank about the pain and anguish and history of racism, and also so frank about the need to make music and be joyful and come together. He's a good representative of that. There's a woman that I met actually at Hermanos years ago, who works there, who goes to New Orleans every year. She stays up all of her vacation. She goes to New Orleans for the music festivals. And she said once, she said, New Orleans is the heart of America. She said, the sad part is that America mostly doesn't know it. And I couldn't agree more. I think there is a way in which, especially, I don't know if some of you may be familiar with the 1619 Project book, and the way in which that's writing a new origin story for America. So if there is going to be a new origin story for America, you know, New Orleans would be the heart of that new story. And I think that's really true. Yeah.
When you think about the people there, can you talk at all? It seems like faith is so interwoven with the experience of music in the Black tradition in the United States. I think PBS did that series on the faith, the church of people who are Black in the United States, and it was just all about music. And I wonder, I don't know if there's anything more.
Yeah, no, I think it's really true. The at Jazz Fest, for instance, I've been there a couple of times, and I could hang out both weekends just in the gospel tent. And they're not all the gospel music there is not from New Orleans necessarily, but the groups from New Orleans are always my favorites, because they have that tension in there of the music of their spirituality and their faith, and also the grief and suffering of their experience. And it's all in that tent with everybody like up and just praising God in such an awesome way. It's just powerful. And I think that's true. Yeah.
So as I said, Tim and I were in some conversations with other people in the New Hampshire conference around improv, and we learned some principles from improv, which I think people in congregations, we can think about what this means in terms of our faith, or in terms of who we are, or even, kind of being part of a congregation. So some of the principles from improv are that no one fails, they address the process, they listen to the people who speak before them, that you don't push an agenda, that some things will not work, mistakes will be made, and these show vulnerability and we'll learn from them, that you challenge assumptions. Now, I know Tim's pretty familiar with these principles, probably in a number of parts of his life. And I wondered if you can speak to some of these principles in relation to faith. Am I right? Do they connect with faith, and how do you think they might do that?
Yes, absolutely. I found in the last 20 years or so, as I've at first very slowly opened myself to playing for anybody but myself, the community of musicians as probably the most welcoming and affirming group of humans that I, have ever known. And that was a wonderful experience about all these principles of improvisation, because if you're going to improvise in public, you want to be with mates. You want to know that community has your back, and that when all these things that you just said, taking turns listening, not pushing agenda, and being willing to make mistakes, you want to be with mates. And I think when I first decided that I was going to try and play with other people and improvise in the presence of other people, I had a friend who's a life coach, and so his metaphor or image is the gremlin, and that is when any of us are called at a point in our life to step into a new thing, there's the voice of the gremlin. And the gremlin is the voice that says, "Are you serious? You're not, what?" It's a mocking tone, and at least my gremlin is very mocking. And so he helped me identify my gremlin so that I could confront my gremlin. And I think that in the life of faith, a lot of times it's our own gremlin that keeps us from stepping into the next place that God is trying to create for us.
Like that new thing.
Exactly, like that new thing. And we get, what are you kidding? You know how you are, you know what always happens, on and on and on. We all have our own individual scripts, but we all have our gremlins. Herbie had his gremlin. That was the gremlin pose. And I think it's such a wonderful example from somebody who's so accomplished that he was able to model that he had enough faith in the process and the music and the improvisational community to step back into that. And I think that's a wonderful model for church as well as for faith, that we are an improvisational community because we invite each other to make mistakes, and because of grace and redemption, we know we'll be okay. Yeah. So
I really like that metaphor kind of for the congregations and the community about how we invite and use those principles. That's really
come
good.
on out.
Yeah. So one other concept that I learned about, I don't know if it's jazz or it's improv, or it might be both, but it's this concept of yes and I have heard that in relation to worship, that it is valuable and makes a difference in worship if we come to worship and be present with an attitude of yes and, that it means coming to worship in a new way. And I wondered if you can talk about that, and also think about that in our relationship with God, yes and how does God say yes and to us, or how do we come into a relationship with God and worship with yes and if it's beneficial.
I think we are so blessed to be in a denomination that for such a long time has had an open and affirming process. Open and affirming is a yes and theology. It says that God's creation is infinitely complex and diverse, and it challenges us over and over again, this creation, to tolerate ambiguity and to tolerate things that are different from us and things going in different ways, as Herbie said, than we think they should go. And worship is a wonderful place to practice that, to come to worship and to be open to what the Spirit has present that day. I've never been in worship, and certainly never led worship, when something didn't happen that I didn't expect. And if you're leading worship, your immediate response is that that's not a good thing. And so yes and means doing what Miles did, modeling that God is there, seeing whatever happens as part of God's creation, and not as something that we need to kind of try and cover up or act like didn't happen. Miles didn't act like Herbie's chord didn't happen. Miles took it on and said, yes, and it's a wonderful, I think it's a wonderful way to live, and it's a wonderful way to come to worship. Yeah, because it's always something's always gonna happen.
That always happens. Well, is there anything you want to say that I missed, Tim, that you might want to share?
Well, just, you said one thing when we were talking about play, is God playful? And the first thing that came to mind when I said, you think God's playful? I said, look at this crew. You think God's playful? I mean, oh my goodness. There's no more joy than hanging with these guys and making music and making mistakes together and turning them into God's music. So yeah, I had a wonderful professor in college. I got to spend an entire year for 3 hours a week, me and 3 other guys, with this professor talking about the Gospel of John. And I learned so much from him about what, in a book like that Gospel, what God is up to. And it is the idea that God is always about making something new. And we're invited to step into that. And there's this moment, I hope I can describe it, because it's just such an exciting and moving moment that happens a lot. And it's often when I'm playing the horn, and makes me emotional. And the rhythm section is killer. It's not today because I'm on piano, but if they had a different piano player today, it would be killer. But and the rhythm section is laying down the changes, and there's this pause as you wait to take your solo. And to me, that is a metaphor for God beckoning me, the music beckoning me. Come on out, come on out. Play with us, make some music with us, make it happen. We'll carry you. The music will carry you. Eddie will carry you. Jock will carry you. It'll be all right. And we'll make some music together. It's hard to describe the power of that moment, but it's powerful for me because it mirrors all the other times in my faith life and my faith journey where I've experienced that, where people have invited me into community at a time when I'm both vulnerable, but also have something to say that I want to try out. And that moment of entering the solo and making something new and finding that God's already there making it with me. And that's a very exciting thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. And we look forward to hearing some more playing now.
We'll see what we can do.
One, two, three, four.
that people would like to share in the community? Yeah. God of glory, hear our prayer. Share that, Ethel. And tell the people on Zoom. Fraser has had back issues, and it wasn't that she needed to have staff and it could be surgery. And so she will be out of hospital. God of glory, hear our prayer. Prayers for David Alexander and Park community. God is good. Then comes God in our prayers this morning, and I'll start with the silence for you to share with God never or whatever else on your own heart. God of grace and glory, praise you for the wonder of creation, what we say. You've given the world the gift of music, another expression of diversity. Gather to worship so then when we go out of this place, we reflect your love to our neighbors and co-workers and children and friends. We ask that they may see you in ways people ask us to explain the hope we have for the world. And our answers thoughtful and express our abiding faith for in all things, and that know within our hearts the value of your faith. May it frame our lives, for it saves us through faith, hope, love, and forgiveness. Because your spirit is at work in us that we speak alone in our lives. things we have failed to do that we discussed. Sometimes we've acted without love. All the time, even or said hurt words. Ask for your forgiveness. Assurance that it can be on our heart and minds are those people who spoke up and others that know these prayers to be answered, comfort, thanks, or time given or a letter written or all the great and cost make us one heart and mind to pray. Give us this day our daily bread, and give us lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from thine is the kingdom, and power, God shows us the meaning of generosity and the diversity of creation and the overflowing love of Jesus Christ, the never-ending gift for Spirit. God has blessed us and called us to be a community that blesses others through the sharing of our love and our talents and our material possessions. So let us rejoice now in what we've been given and what is ours to give as we receive our morning offering.
This arrangement we're going to do for your offertory is receiving its world premiere. We didn't hear it until about 90 minutes ago. And it's a medley of 3 hymns, all of which have the word glory in the title. To God be the glory, all glory, laud, and honor, and thine is the glory. So we're calling it a hymn swing. Ouch. I hope the music's better than the subject. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
Let us stand and say together our prayer of dedication. God of glory, receive these gifts and the offering of our lives. As Jesus was lifted up from earth, draw us to your heart in the midst of this world, that all creation may be brought from bondage to freedom, from darkness to light, and from death to life, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
So remain standing. We're going to invite you into the music now for you to participate. All right? What a friend we have in Jesus. Now the hymn now.
So may the love of Jesus Christ bring you wholeness, the grace of God grant you peace, and the breath of the Holy Spirit instill passion. And we ask for God to be with us as we go, and may our lives speak of God's goodness and in some way of God's glory. Amen.
Want me to introduce these characters now or after?
Do you want him to introduce now? Yeah, go for it. Have a seat, and we'll learn who these guys are.
Could you use the mic?
Oh,
Sorry. Just accessibility.
Well, thank you all so much for having us here this morning. It's always a joy to bring this music and our friendship out into the world, as we say. So Of these 7 people, 6 of us live within 2 blocks of one another. And we just can't escape one another. But back on the base, Concord, New Hampshire, Jock Urban. Oh, yeah. Who's next on the piano? Dr. Tim Wildman. On the drums, Steady Eddie Lassen. On the alto saxophone today, my good friend, the next door neighbor, the godfather of jazz, Joey Placenti. We call him Mr. Concord. He's
Oh, yes.
president of the Concord
In
Chamber of
town.
Commerce.
And in
And
town.
runs all the in-town stuff. Mr. Tim Sink. on the saxophone. And last but not least, the only guy who does not live in Concord. He hails from the town of Barnstead, New Hampshire. Mike Fugere. I'm gonna give this back to Emily. We're gonna take you out with kind of a little funky thing, almost kind of Herbie Hancock 70s style. Yeah, I belong with her.
We call it Dr. Cool.
Dr. Cool.
All right, so we got alto 1, flute 1, bass 1, and drum 1. Here we go. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
We'd like to thank our reader today, Suzanne Allison, Cashlyn Powers for sharing our mission moment, myself for some production. And again, a wonderful big thank you to all our musicians in the Prodigals, Bob, Joey, Tim, Mike, Tim, Jacques, and Eddie. Big round of applause again, please. We appreciate you joining us. This week we have meditation on Tuesday nights at 5 p.m. Am I wrong? But you're okay. Just making sure with Joanne that we're right. We have meditation on Tuesday and Thursday nights at 5 p.m. on our Zoom channel. And then we have Bible study at 10:30. The Women's Fellowship is having their wonderful retreat to Bedrock Gardens on Saturday. If you are last minute wanting to join that, telephone Joanne White to make sure you get on the list for that. I believe they're gonna be carpooling and so forth like that. And then we have Sunday worship at 10 o'clock. And a couple different announcements we have going on is that there's a visitation meeting for those who have expressed interest in Neighbors Indeed on Sunday, June 26th, following the worship service. There's an open house at Horton Center on Saturday, June 18. So this coming Saturday, and it is from 11 to 4, and you can head up to Horton Center and worship at Chapel Rock. They're gonna have a cookout, tours, games, all kinds of stuff. And I'm sure if you want to carpool or if you're more interested in joining in on that you can probably, well, Jeff, are you around or are you headed out?
No, we'll be halfway across the country.
Okay,
All right.
Jeff's gonna be halfway across country. So my guess is if you want to carpool on that, you kind of have to find some folks going. And we have a council meeting on June 21st. If anybody else has announcements in-house, I will hand off the microphone. And if you are on Zoom and you have an announcement, please feel free to unmute and share your announcement.
I should have included this in the prayer time, but today is the spring association meeting of the Merrimack Association. And we are beginning that with a confirmation rite for a group of 7 confirmands who did confirmation as an association. And so keep them in your prayers today as that's a big deal for kids to do that. If you'd like to attend, it's available by Zoom or it's at the Plymouth Congregational Church starting at 1:30.
Any other announcements? Yeah, Ashley?
Just at the table up here, if you have a moment before you go, there is some informational on the services that NAMI offers. A lot of different shows of the programs, and even if you just take it and share it, there's plenty of information there. I'll also be putting some of that information on the bulletin board available for use.
Rebecca mentioned during the sermon or during her interview with Tim about Juneteenth, which is this weekend. And I would encourage all of you to look on the website for the Black Heritage Trail. Each year they're doing more and more, and this year they're doing a whole week of activities. And they're not just in Portsmouth. There will be, I think it's the Howard Gospel Choir next weekend in Portsmouth, but they're also going to St. Gaudens home in Cornish and recognizing the first Black battalion in the Civil War. And anyway, lots of great stuff going on. So Black Heritage Trail. Anybody else?